everyone's favorite time of year is coming up. Yes, I know Christmas is over. I'm of course talking about tax season. You know it, you love it. Finding out what breadcrumbs of your money the IRS is going to decide to give back to you. Hopefully you do get that return in time, but this year you might not, because this tax season circa 2023 is looking a little different than prior years. According to federal data, there's a shortage, a big shortage of accountants and auditors. The Wall Street Journal says more than 300,000 of them have quit in the past 2 years, and many companies say the turnover has left them unable to meet customers' needs for services such as annual business audits and preparing tax returns. Quote, some firms even say they have stopped performing external audits for businesses altogether because they are unable to staff those projects. And for small organizations, the cost of a basic audit or regulatory compliance is rising fast. So to cope, small and mid-sized firms are starting to hire overseas for the first time. America's accountant Dan Geltrude is experiencing these shortages firsthand. He joins me right now to discuss. Dan, how is this year's tax season affecting you and your firm? Have you had to, for example, resort to hiring people overseas?
So, like the Wall Street Journal article references by Lindsay Ellis, and she did a great job highlighting this, is yes, there is a significant shortage of accountants. So, what can accounting firms do? Well, of course, rely more on technology, but that has limitations because you still need a human factor. If there are not enough accountants in the United States, what does a firm do? Well, you have to look for an international solution. That's if that's not only if you want to grow here, Addison, it's in order to be able to handle your current workload. Now, why is that? Well, a lot of people have left public accounting, that's one. And two, there are a lot more demands on accountants now. Why? So many more rules and regulations. And of course, we always have our deadlines to meet. So this has become an enormous challenge for which accounting firms across the United States are trying to figure out how can we get all this work done.
Now, why are we seeing such an exodus of accountants, Dan, right now? 300,000, that's no small number. What's behind that?
So, really, what happened during the pandemic, because that's where we've seen this really become extreme. So, there was so much going on with regulations in which accountants needed to help on the compliance area for their clients, on top of everything else they were doing. So, what simply happened is accountants really were overworked in many situations, and they decided, you know what? I simply don't want to do this anymore. So it was a combination of you have accountants leaving the profession. And on the other side, Addison, the number of accounting majors in colleges are dropping. So that pipeline thinning out, more people leaving. Guess what? Shortage of accountants.
And how long do you think this is going to go on? Do you think they're going to recover? I know there's good money to be had in accounting. It's a good major that a lot of people use, very useful major, especially if you want to run a business one day or something like that. Dan, do you see this blowing over soon, or how long do you think there's going to be this shortage?
I actually think that this is a long-term problem here, Addison. And let me just say, it is not as simple as saying, well, the accounting profession has a problem. That's their problem. No, 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 no. This is everyone's problem, because if there are not enough accountants, and I suspect this is going to continue for years to come, how do you make sure that you're able to meet deadlines and still deliver the quality, particularly in financial statements for public companies? You have literally the entire investment world relying on what's in those financial statements. Once that credibility has a crack in it, now you face a true financial crisis. And for those small businesses and even those that need to file their tax returns, their individual tax returns, if there's not enough accountants to do it, now what? Now you can't file your tax returns on time? So this impacts everyone.
Yeah, it's a scary situation. I've got to ask how are you doing managing it, Dan? You are America's accountant. I'm sure you've been able to pivot quite nicely and weather the storm. Is that right?
Yes, we saw this coming for quite some time, and we said, listen, we need to figure out how to deal with this. So we said we need to absolutely rely more on technology, and where we can, specifically from the standpoint of inputting information, we said, you know what? Let's take a look at whether we have an international solution to help us meet the demand and, of course, be able to grow. And that's what we've had to do, Addison.
Well, I'm glad you guys are doing okay, Dan. I hope that this gets resolved. Hopefully, it's not long term, as you say. It's looking like it's going to be. America's accountant Dan Geltrude, always great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Addison.